Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Thomas Simon, and I'm here. Next to me is the most important person of our foundation. It's Marie-Claude Ewa, who is our program manager and is actually the person with whom you're going to get in contact for further information or for any question you might have. So remember her. She's the most important person here. I'm Thomas. I'm a fellow of the Belgium American Education Foundation. I studied physics undergrad at ULB, and then I went for 2 years to the US with the financial support of our foundation. And that was a long, long time ago. I left in 1987, so I'm a dinosaur. But I've been volunteering and helping the foundation since I got this fellowship because it really changed my life. And that's the reason why I'm here. Hope to convince other young people and young girls, boys and girls, to actually take advantage of our financial support. Just a quick word about the foundation. So it's important that you aware that the foundation was created 100 years ago. We are celebrating our centennial this year. And it was actually the initiative of one individual, and his name is Herbert Hoover, who later actually became president of the United States. Herbert Hoover, 100 years ago, was actually a very successful mining engineer. And when he was about 40, at the start of World War I, he has been helping American soldier to be brought back to the US. So he was quite good in terms of logistics because he had to move thousands of people from Belgium and France back to the US. A few years later, so we were in 41, the Belgium situation was really difficult. People were starving, and a Belgium delegation, namely Franqui and the family Solvay, went to London to meet with the ambassador of the US and said, you know, we are really suffering. There is a big problem of hunger in Belgium. And the ambassador said, okay, there's only one person who can help you and who has some expertise, is Herbert Hoover. So they met with Herbert Hoover, they invite Herbert Hoover to Belgium, and Herbert Hoover realized that we were really in a shitty situation. And he said, listen, I feel a moral obligation to help those Belgians, and if you allow, I will set up a huge fundraising effort, and I will use ships to bring wheat to Belgium via Holland, who was a neutral country in World War I. And so he actually organized a huge effort, and he brought, you know, tons and tons and tons of wheat to Belgium, and it was really instrumental actually in saving our population. And the fundraising was so enormous that at the end of World War I, there was some money left over. And he decided that education should be the focus of the leftover. And he first built the Stellenbosch campus in Brussels of the ULB. He also reconstructed part of the KU Leuven that was actually destroyed. And after having done that, there was still some money left over, and he decided that he should create a foundation dedicated to support young student and researcher. And the focus of this foundation, that's important for you to know, is to foster friendship between the US and Belgium. And he thought, you know, if you really want to foster friendship, in fact, education and exchange is quite a good idea. And so in 1920, the first boat of Belgian student and researcher left Belgium to the US. And you should also know that we do have American student and researcher coming from the US for a year in Belgium. Because of that history, fostering relationship friendship between Belgium and the US, you should know that our foundation required people to get either Belgian citizenship for Belgium, and for American, either US citizen or green card holder. So we do have this limitation because of our history. We cannot support someone who does not have the the Belgian citizenship. So that's one of the constraints, but it's also because of our history. I have a presentation. If you have question, I don't know if you can raise question, but that would be nice. Maybe there is a chat room for question, but I don't see any chat room at this stage.
Because we put it in full screen.
Oh yeah, maybe we should skip that. Oops. Can you still see my screen? Are you still online? Yes, and then share here. Sorry. You're not there. Oops. Yes. No, it's okay. Do you?
No, they don't see. You have to put it in, I think, like that, so that they have it in full screen.
Okay. Sorry for this. So we are here to communicate about the program that will start in the US next September. So what we call the year 21-22. We are about the right time, or at least, it's a bit short to the deadline, because our process would require you to apply to our foundation and file an application by end of October this year. So you have a few days to go. It's still feasible. We have people who have done in 3 days, so it's not impossible. Of course, it is time to get started if you apply for 21-22. Of course, they might have people in this discussion who are thinking about coming and or going to the US at a later stage. Everything I will say today almost apply to later years, except specific date, and you will see what I'm talking about. There's 2 groups of fellowship. One is dedicated to graduate studies, and one are dedicated to researcher. If you are a potential graduate student in the US, you should know that the US systems is quite competitive. You don't get admitted in a US university like this. So you need actually, or we require you, if you're a graduate student, we require you to apply to at least 3 US universities. Marie-Claude would argue that in some competitive field, or for example in STEM field, we would even recommend you to apply to maybe 5 universities instead of 3. But the minimum is 3, because we would push you to go to very high top school, and those top schools are competitive, and you are in competition with other nations, with other students, and it's not that easy to enter. So you might have your preferred university, but don't bet only on that one. If you are a researcher, it's very different. You just need to be invited by one US university or one research center or lab. We don't ask you to apply to several ones. You just need to be invited in one. The other things that you would have to look at, and it's specific for this year, which is influenced by the COVID, is you have to look, once you have selected your university and your program, and please, go for the best. So in your field of study or in your field of research, aim at the best. And if you're a graduate students, look at what kind of standard tests they do require. And that's different per university, it's different per program. So look very carefully. And if you need to take one of those tests, prepare for them. Because in Belgium, we're not used to those multiple choice standard tests. You need to be drilled. So if you are required to take one of them, do prepare for it. You should also know that you can take those tests several times. So if the first time your score is very poor or not good enough, do not hesitate to take it a second time. And the last point that you also should start thinking, and I think that's the reason why you're here, is that US education, especially for students, is quite expensive. Tuition could be very high. So you have to look for financial support. We are a very, very generous fund provider, but even if you get our fellowship, it might not be enough to cover the whole cost. So we would also recommend you to apply to other sources of funding. Now, basically, except with one exception, we are financing your first year in the US. There is one exception, and I'll come to that in a few minutes. And sometimes, some graduate study program could be much longer than 1 year. But do not hesitate to go. Our experience, and we have 100 years of experience, has demonstrated that none of our fellows, I said none of our fellows, have been experienced problem for the second or following year in the US. You get a funding from us. Belgium are very good students. They do very well in graduate study in the US. And if you need to be there for more than 1 year, you will get, and I'm sure you will get financial support from the US university or in the US. So do not hesitate or be afraid of the fact that you need to finance several years. We will provide the seed money for the first year, and don't worry, you'll get financial support for the remaining of your program. So what do we have on offer? I'll start with the graduate studies part. We have 4 different products or 4 different fellowships. The first one, which is quite a recent one, is a 2-year. So in that case, it's the only case where we finance you for 2 years for people who only have a bachelor degree in Belgium, and they go to the US for a full master, and for their first master, in fact. We will provide you with fund up to $100,000, $60,000 for the first year of your master degree, and $40,000 for your second year. The only requirement that we have is that you should have obtained your bachelor degree, because that's a requirement at the time that you leave. Of course, you need to have complete your bachelor degree, but the other constraint is that you should not have it had before January 1st, 2020. That's an important requirement, so that we don't want to send people for the initial master, as we call them, people who have actually obtained a bachelor degree, nothing else, but that was 5 years ago. That would not be considered for us as acceptable as a candidate. So that's a very powerful experience. The people who actually left to the US for the initial master are really, really very positive about their experience. Of course, it's not perhaps appropriate for people, for example, in law, because they will not be able to practice law in Belgium, or it's difficult, for example, for a doctor who actually it's also a legal diploma, and if you have only a bachelor degree in medicine, with that system, you will not be able to practice in Belgium. So it's really applicable to some students, but not to all of them. So that's what we call the initial master. The other possibility, and that has been a core of our graduate study fellowship program, is what we call the complementary master. So that's for people who already have a master or will have a master when they leave to the US. So for example, we will accept people who would have their master degree in June 2021, and they could have a fellowship with us to start a second master in September 2021 in the US. We will support them up to $60,000. It's cover whole academic year. It's made of 2 parts, stipend that goes towards your living expenses and tuition and fee that goes to your school. The only requirement, but it's an important one, is that we do not accept applicants who have obtained their bachelor degree, and I said the bachelor degree, before January 1, 2017. So again, the idea is that we believe, and that's a philosophy of the foundation, we want to support talented individuals, and we believe that they can grow faster if they're younger. So we don't want to people who have been studying a long time ago and want to get a second master after many gap years. So we prefer actually people who have obtained a bachelor degree not too long ago, and of course they would have to have their master at the time they leave to the US, of course. So that's the second fellowship for graduate study. The third one, it's specific for law students. It's called the LLM program. So actually it's the master program in law. We do offer a little bit less financial support, so it's limited to, but it's a lot of money, to $50,000. The requirement in terms of time at which you have obtained your bachelor degree is a little bit longer because we allow law students to have done their complete bar exam and bar stage in Belgium, which takes 3 years. So you could actually do your master in law at UCL, do your full bar exam and your full stage in Belgium, and then leave with us for LLM. So we give you up to 3 years after completion of your law degree at UCL before you actually leave with us on the LLM program. You should know it's highly competitive in terms of number of applicants. So we tend to, we need to be quite selective on that program, but it's a very successful and rewarding program for the people who actually benefit from it. And the last graduate study program that we can offer, and it's the most generous one, will give you $70,000 for 1 year. And it's for people who want to do a PhD program in the US. And you should know, and we'll tell you, that it's very competitive to be able to enter in a PhD program, especially in the STEM field. And it's, of course, open to both people who have only a bachelor degree and instead, I want to actually go for a PhD program in the US, but it's also open for people who already have a master or anything in between. But as we say, it's highly competitive. You should know that the PhD program in the US starts with real lessons. So it's not only doing research, it's also in the US attending classes. But it's really something that is a powerful personal development tool. Will finance the first year, and from experience, you get then afterwards, an additional financing for 5-6 years of additional support in the US to be able to finish your PhD program. Up to now, all of our candidates have succeeded and got their PhD in the US. So that covers the 4 different types of fellowship we have for graduate students. In all cases, they include health insurance coverage. And again, they're limited to Belgian citizens. So that's all, I think, for graduate study fellowship. We can then move to research fellowship. And there we have 3 types. The first types, and it especially has been used in the medical field, that's people who want to do some research while they are doing their master education in Belgium. So you, for example, you are in the medical field, or you're trying to be a doctor, you are at the master level, and you say, I'm going to take a gap year, either after my bachelor degree or while I'm doing my master degree, and I want to spend a year of research in the US. We will actually provide with $30,000 of living expenses. We also will provide with health insurance. What you should, the requirement for this kind of support is that you should have at the minimum your bachelor degree at the time of departure. So we are required you to get your bachelor degree at the latest by July 1st, 2021. And you should not have more than 1 year of your master degree. So you can leave with us either at the end of your bachelor degree, right after your bachelor degree, or you can leave it and doing your second, in place of your second year of your master program, you actually take a gap year and you do some research in the top laboratory in the US. It's very successful in the Dutch-speaking community. At this stage, we don't have yet a lot of traction from the French-speaking student, and we think that's too bad because this gap year, especially for very good students, it's an amazing booster. And you will be able actually to be confronted with top research lab, and you would actually expand your network substantially. And then you come back after this gap year and you complete your master degree in Belgium. The only thing you need in this case, and that's true for every research fellowship, you need to be invited by someone, or by a lab. So that's the first level. The second, and it's quite recent, but we kickstart that product last year, and as I said, we got quite a lot of success on the Dutch-speaking part. The second type of fellowship for research is for people who actually enroll in the PhD program at UCL currently, and they want to actually benefit from a year abroad in the US. Of course, again, we try to give our support to the people with the highest potential of development and people who would benefit the most from this US exposure. So we put a limitation again in terms of tenure and timing. You can benefit from this program only if you have not done more than 2 years of your PhD program at UCL. So you can leave the first year, but that's sometimes difficult because your subject is not yet defined. So it's tricky to leave the first year, but you can leave the second year of your PhD program or the third year of your PhD program, but not later. And again, we would recommend, of course, to be invited by a university or research center that's really the best in your field. No, depending on your field, it could be a very different type of institution. Everybody would have a different shortlist, but really aim for the best. So that's what we call doctoral research fellowship. So again, for people who are currently enrolled in a PhD at UCL. And the last one is what we call postdoc. The stipend, the living expense is higher because usually people are somewhat older, they have a family, might be children. It's a grant for up to 12 months. Again, the only important requirement for you to know is that by the time that you actually will leave, or would say more precisely, by July 1st, 2021, you should not have more than 2 years of postdoctoral research somewhere else. And so you would actually leave with us at the latest for your third year of postdoctoral research. You can leave earlier, of course. You can come to us right after your PhD, or you can come to us after 1 year. You can come to us after 2 years, but no more than that. And again, a simple invitation letter from your US university. So that's the 3 fellowship that we do offer for researcher. So as we said, there is a deadline which is quite coming up shortly, which is the application to us as a foundation. Basically, 3 components to it. It's all online. One is to provide us with some personal data and the background about your education. The second one that's very important, it's a 1 page about yourself, talking really about personal things, what is driving you, what motivates you, you know, what is so special about you as a person. And it's something that we as a Belgium are not used to do it at all. We never do that, but it's a good exercise and it's very important. It has to be very personal and really something that you write about yourself. And don't be shy. You know, the more you show, the better you increase your chance. And lastly, of course, a statement about why you want to go to do research or to study in the US. How does this plan fit in your whole career? What are you, you know, what if you're doing research, what kind of research are you going to undertake that? And why do you believe that this experience will help you grow? Because we are, you know, our point here is to provide you with opportunities. So we want to make sure that we actually support a person who will blossom and, you know, take advantage of the support. So that's by October 31st. Then again, importantly, you know, if you do study, you need to let us know a list. It might not be the final list, but a list of 3 universities, that's minimum 3, where you tend to apply. You don't need to apply by October 31st. This will come later, but let us know by October 31st, at least an initial listing. If you're doing research, either indicate where you plan to go doing your research by October 31st, but we will need an official invitation letter by November 15th. And then as part of your application, ideally before October 31st, but we do have a little bit of tolerance about that, we will need 3 reference letters from people that you will designate, so that's important. They should not be written by yourself. They should be written by people who know you very well. So don't only hit with a big name written by somebody who does not know you at all. Those letters are powerful if they are specific about you, if they tell something, you know, quite personal about you, and you know, because of that, you know, try to find people who know you or can talk very specifically about what you did, what you achieved, you know, what are your weaknesses, what are your strengths. I mean, it has to be quite specific. And we would recommend you not to read those letters. You know, those letters are confidential from your referee to us. Those letters could actually also be used when you apply to the university in the US. You know, it could be the same letter written by the same people. We don't want a letter to be, you know, specifically done for us, but it has to be specific about you, that's for sure. And then in terms of process, end of November 2020, we will do a preliminary selection of the application, but at that stage, most of the application will be accepted. Only maybe 2-3% might be rejected, but the norm is that all the application will be normally accepted. And then of those accepted application, every single one of you will be invited to a face-to-face interview. When I say face-to-face, this probably will happen via Zoom or via Teams, but you will have the opportunity to defend your case. And again, that's not at all used in Belgium. So there will be a mock-up interview on campus at UCL by people who went through that process. And we would recommend you to attend those mock-up interviews. They're quite helpful because it could be quite impressive as a young student or a young researcher to sit in front of those 15 people who all have quite an impressive academic records. And so, it's better to be a little bit prepared to that. We are usually 15 because of COVID. I think this year it will be reduced to 9, but the 9 that are there are the toughest ones. So, and that's end of January. The date's already known, and then the decision will be made a few days after, and you will be then selected as potential fellow of our foundation. Of course, the fellowship will be granted only if you go to the US. So that's very important for you to know, because we are here to foster friendship. It would not make any sense for us to make a fellow somebody who is staying in Belgium and attending online classes with a US university. So we know that the situation is quite complex at this stage. We know that classes currently in the US are taking place in an hybrid format with some online education, some education face-to-face. But what we require is that you need to be in residence in the US. In that context, you should know that what we call the boat or the class of 2019-2020 has been able to pursue most of their program in the US, and the class 2020-2021, a lot of them have already left to the US. So we are still, we didn't close our program. We're still helping every single fellow to actually be able to achieve what they want. And we will help you, next year, if the crisis is not over, we'll do our best to provide all the support we can to make your dream feasible. Yeah, it's very important. That's a very important point. We are not only very generous in terms of money provided, but we also have an extremely high success rate. So out of the, for the class of 1920, so people who left in 2019, we got 126 candidates interviewed, and more than 50% of them got a fellowship. So it's an extremely high rate. The BIF in that sense is unique in the world. We talk to other countries that provide a fellowship to people to go to study in the US. We are distinguished in two ways. Both we have much larger amounts offered per fellowship, but also our success rate is extremely high. So we invite people, especially French-speaking candidates, especially from UCL, to really do not hesitate to apply to us. We do have a substantial financial means. We want to support the best. So if you are good, if you have an interesting project, if you are an interesting person, come to us. We have money available, and with a success rate of 50%, you should not hesitate 1 second. We do also have, outside of this program, which is the deadline, October 31st, regarding the foundation, we do have another program which is dedicated to people who want to do an MBA, but that's with a different deadline. That's a deadline in May, by May 1st, 2021. And it's actually a support for 2 years, and it's $100,000, and it's made up $50,000 outright gift and $50,000 interest-free loan that must be repaid in 5 years after graduation. But I think that's less urgent because it's a program dedicated to MBA, and most of the MBA program require 2, 3, 4 years of work experience. So mainly, I don't think there are many people in this room who actually would benefit from this program. But if you happen to be interested, or if you happen to know people who are interested, do not hesitate to communicate this idea to your friends. I think that's it. And I think I will close the PowerPoint and then stop sharing. And I don't know what will happen now.
Leave the word to Quentin.
Quentin, who is a fellow of ours, will give an introduction about his experience. He was a fellow at Harvard, I believe, and a much younger person than myself. So he has more recent update about what it is to be a BAF fellow.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Sorry, can you stop your microphone because I hear myself kind of.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Great. Hi, everyone. I'll try to be quite short because I see there's a couple of questions running, so I'll try to tell you my experience in 5 minutes or so. So indeed, I've been a BAF postdoc fellow during the academic year 2018 to 2019, so it's quite recent indeed. Currently, I'm a postdoctoral fellow, FNRS postdoctoral fellow at UC Louvain, and actually I'm working on medieval history. I'm a medieval historian. I applied to the BAF in 2017 when I was at the final stage of my doctoral research. I was finishing to write my thesis, and so I applied in October. I passed the interview in January, and I got the very good answer in very early February. So even before I did my PhD Viva, my PhD defense, I had the answer from the BAF, and I knew that I will be able to go to Harvard in early October, which was obviously a very nice and a very good answer. And I forgot to show you, I have a small PowerPoint about my experience. So here it is, you should be able to see it. So in my case, obviously I chose to go to Harvard University because it's one of the top universities in the world. And there are also some of the best specialists in my field to go to this university. I think from my experience, it's important not only to choose a very strong, a very top university, but also a place where you're sure that there will be specialists with whom we will be able to collaborate, to work with. And that's why I chose to go to Harvard. And for me, the BAF was an evidence because I heard about that foundation pretty much the same way you heard about it today. I heard that it has very good stipends and tuition fees, and as well that it's a very, I would say, human-sized institution. You know, it's not an extremely big program. You can have a very direct relationship with the foundation, which was very nice to me, and that's what I also realized just shortly after the interview. What I would like to say about my experience as a BAF fellow at Harvard University is that I arrived in early October 2018, so just at the moment of the inauguration of the new president of Harvard University. So it was very nice to have that sort of big events I could attend and see all the atmosphere there. which was very interesting. And that's the very first thing I experienced at Harvard in the Boston area in general, the difference of atmosphere, the difference of culture. As a postdoctoral researcher, it was also very interesting for me as a personal experience to discover a very different way of life, a different way to work and so on. And so that was pretty much very nice. There also the weather also was of course very different from here at in New England. You have a very cold winter and extremely hot summer, so it was also part of the fun, I would say. On a very practical way, I would say that as a BF fellow, all the administrative part was not that difficult. There were some paperwork indeed, but it was not even that very difficult to go to the US to apply for a visa and so on. It's pretty easy as a BF fellow, and also as someone who got an invitation from a US university, it's pretty easy to go through all the visa process. I would say again, as on a very personal and practical level, one of the most challenging parts of my experience was actually the accommodation, because the accommodation in the Boston and Cambridge area is quite expensive, so it's quite difficult to get a nice apartment on a nice room if you decide to have roommates. I would say that was the pretty much only difficulty I had to experience. It was not even that difficult. I just realized that I would have to pay a lot of money to have a decent accommodation, but fortunately, as a postdoctoral fellow, the stipend of the BAF was quite generous, so it was not that a problem. As a researcher at Harvard University and as a BAF fellow, what I really appreciated was the extreme freedom I had during that year to do my research. It was quite nurturing as well, because when you're attending a top university in the US, of course, there is a lot of animation. There's a lot of specialists coming from all around the world, attending seminars, organizing conferences, and so on. And so you can have a lot of interactions with that people, and that's what's quite exciting. And for example, as well, if you're a BF fellow and you're going to a university from the East Coast, you could have the opportunity to go to Yale to have a visit of the university by the president of the BAF, Emil Bulpap himself. So it's quite interesting for visits. Finally, just to be short, I would say that as an alumnus of the BAF, what I really appreciated from that experience was, as I said, the freedom, the fact that it was very good for my personal curriculum to go to a US university, but also I feel that it's quite interesting to be a BAF fellow, because you are part of an organization which has more than 100 years and which is organizing events every year. Every year there is at least one event organized by the BAF, and as a BAF alumnus, you're always welcome to attend to that event. So it's nice to keep contact with the foundation and the former fellows I met during that time. So that's pretty much everything. I think I've said what I had to say, and if you have questions, it's more than welcome.